fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going around the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up top here!
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
40 of the best sim racers, $100,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive and sought-after season in iRacing World Championship history. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Esports Supercar.
Gotta love this time of year. Only one can be champion. Let's go playoff racing. I said, hey, hey, oh, oh, hey, hey. There's no surrender. Let me hear my battle
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Well, what a venue we have in store tonight, ladies and gentlemen. The uber-fast 5.7 kilometers of Daytona International Speedway's road course have very quickly became a crowd favorite for many, many reasons. But the only reason I need to give you is that last time the iRacing official V8 Supercar Series made their way to the circuit, the top three were three wide and separated by 13 thousandths of a second at the finish, as the then Synergy Sim Racing duo of Wayne Burke and Jordan Ross held off a rapidly approaching Forzen El Nabi of Trick Sim Sport. This time around, not a single one of those three drivers are in the same team, nor in this race during that classic, but we also have some new drivers tonight who might just want to buy their way into a slice of the Daytona International Speedway highlight reel. I'm Bo Albert, and alongside me is Mr. Zachary Hanlon, and Zach, both of us lit up in excitement when we saw this circuit on the calendar for this season because it so often produces brilliant races, but can we expect another tonight?
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how everyone's looking pace-wise. At the moment, Brady Myers in his Zero Esports machine is looking pretty handy at the moment, sitting on provisional pole, but there is quite a tight pack in behind him, and the most important thing about here at Daytona is the draft. And the draft is so important around the oval section of this beautiful racing circuit, and it's going to be very difficult for our leading pack to run away with it because of that draft effect. And Jackson Suslan Harlow has gone to pole position now, and Brady, I think, has maybe a little bit more pace in that car. He's still got to complete his second lap, but he's actually still parked in the pit lane, so might not be able to challenge for pole position at the moment. But yes, Bo, it's going to be a great night of racing and a big draft fest.
Yeah, it certainly will be, but I'm not surprised at all to see Jackson Suslan Harlow on pole position at the moment. Of course, we had a fantastic AOSC race on Friday as Jake Burton goes to pole position with a brilliant time, almost gets below a 1:43. But for Logitech G Altus Esports in AOSC, they were extremely strong with their three regular drivers and one horribly off the pace driver in pairing up with Ethan Warren. But for Jackson Suslan Harlow and Dane Warren, they were really happy with the balance of the car. They felt they had it nailed. So for Jackson, he's got a lot of confidence going into this race, so look out for him. But he has to chase down Jake Burton, who has that pole at the moment. And more importantly, Jake Burton leading your Drivers' Championship after 8 rounds. Of course, 8 rounds means that you have now a full spectrum of drop rounds covered. So every result you do from here, you are actually able to use it as a drop round if it is a worse performance. So for Jake Burton, that's good news for him. He can work on his points tally. Brady Myers is only 71 points behind, though, and well and truly in the shot for a good result here tonight, lining up 3rd currently as we have 40 seconds left at the moment in qualifying. But this championship isn't over yet, and it can get tighter and tighter because this drop round really makes things interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying, quite a few guys are going to be relying on some of these drop rounds later in the season. Of course, some people have other commitments, and some people have other racing that they do as well. So incorporating that into following one of these iRacing official series can be very important, only needing to do 8 out of the 12 weeks. But qualifying is now coming to a close. Couple of cars still circulating to get a bit more practice in, but the flag has flown, and it will be Jake Burton who takes us away from pole position this evening, ahead of Jackson Suslan-Harlow. Brady Myers is going to start from 3rd position alongside James Mackey, who's been showing good form in the last few races of this season as well. Sam Sutton, an experienced driver, starting out of 5th alongside James Scott. Job Stewart, will start from 7th position alongside Craig Jones up in 8th. Good qualifying from him. Damian Johnston is going to be taking us out from 9th position, and the top 10 position is going to go to Brian Borg.
The 11th spot goes to the 11 car. Blake Purdy lines up in a great spot alongside Sean Thompson on the 6th row of the grid. Thomas Hinz and Michael Taliancic will line up on the 7th row of the grid, and Pursuit Sim Racing with a brilliant result in AOSC. What can they do in this race? Robert Hooper starts things off from the top 15 with Steve Jansen, Brad Newman, and Jamie Stovo, your top 18 for Team Hyperdrive. Christian Smart and Brenton O'Brien are your top 20, with Christian Ortega, Rob Harris on your 11th row of the grid with a mammoth grid size here with 27 cars, which is great to see. Greg Sharp and Liam Wilde will line up 23rd and 24th, with Ben Christensen and perhaps 2 of the bigger talking points, Harley Haber and Corey Preston, your last 2 cars on the grid. But that might not be such a bad thing for those 2, because they are on a slightly flatter part of the circuit. And why am I mentioning that? Because your top half of the grid are starting on the tri-oval banking. So if they get any kind of wheel spin, the car will naturally want to slide down to the lower hand side of the circuit, and that can create a big checkup as the revs rise on round number 9 here at Daytona International Speedway. And what can they do off the start? The answer is pretty nicely for Jackson Suslan-Harlow on the outside, but Jake Burton with the inside can hold things pretty nicely as well as they make the run into the very fast turn number 1, but it won't be too quick as it's a very tight section on the opening lap and they all funnel through. It's very easy to make a mistake, and so far so good for the entire field, everything looking nice and clean, which is great to see as the V8 Supercars all blaze down into the very tight hairpin of turn number 3 here at Daytona. And you can see the headlights are on all the cars, which is great to see, and it really adds to the lighting effects of iRacing. But at the moment, the only driver that is lighting up the timing screens is Jake Burton. A fantastic start, and he did everything he needed to do off the start, Zach.
Yeah, nice getaway there for Burton. Rest of the field did a good job to get through. Checked up a little bit into turn number 1, as checking up again here into the slow right-hander just before they start heading back towards to come back onto the oval here. And down onto the oval is a Gone Rogue Motorsports car going wide there. And well, that was Harley Haber actually going through and around there. So already Harley Haber and Corey Preston, by the way, have made up a bunch of positions. They're sitting tucked in just behind Brenton O'Brien now. And a couple of cars now looking to move down into the bus stop here, but everyone's going to stay single file for the time being. Haber just having a little bit of a look on Preston there, but yeah, nice clean getaway from all of our competitors here.
Yeah, Corey Preston and Harley Haber, 6 and 4 spots gained respectively. Nice by them, but how was Jackson Suslan-Harlow getting very close to the back of Jake Burton into the bus stop chicane, but he's going to get a whole lot closer as they reach the start-finish line. Brady Myers just ducking out for a little bit of fresh air on the outside, of course, with the high speeds and drafting nature of this circuit. It's very easy to overheat the engines around here, actually. So the drivers will have to be careful of that, but their saving grace is a 24-degree ambient track temp will mean that the drivers will be able to actually have a fairly cool track, which will help them. But Harley Haber already into the pits, which is quite odd to see. And he's actually aborting on the race by the looks of it. He's still in the car and he will rejoin from the pit lane. So he's not giving up on the race just yet. My director is giving me false information, as he so often does. Throw him under the bus there. But nonetheless, Jackson Susan Harlow putting up so much pressure on Jake Burton at the moment. But that's something they don't really need to do at this point, is it, Zach? Because the draft nature of this circuit, it's almost better to work together and try and gap the rest of the field.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for them to do that, but it's definitely the way that you would want to approach this if you're this leading trio here. I think that Jake's probably not in the ideal position having to lead this. Brady and Jackson tucked in behind are going to have a good amount of slipstream going on here, and Jackson's already just starting to back off down the straight, and that's going to allow them to save quite a bit of fuel, which when it comes to the pit stop strategy for these guys is going to make a pretty big difference, especially at the rate that the fuel goes into these cars. Some of these guys might be able to save a tenth or even a second, depending on how much fuel saving they can do, just having a little bit further back in the battle for 10th position. And Damian Johnston's just had to give up to Blake Purdy as they're coming down the back straight. And now actually Jackson Suslin Harlow has decided to peel ahead of Jake and take the lead of the race. A little bit of a lock-up down into turn number 1, but he makes the move stick. Jake's now just sitting ahead of Brady Myers, who's sitting back there, and Sam Sutton's having a little bit of a look on James Mackey as well, who's got some new sponsorship on his Pursuit Sim racing car there. Sutton holding it strong down the inside. It's going to be pretty tough to go 2x2 through this next section here, and Sutton's going to back out, just allow Mackey in, and he's going to have to find somewhere else to have a little bit of a move here as Sam Sutton.
Yeah, there are a lot of overtaking opportunities around this circuit, which is one of the good things about this track. The only issue, like you said, is that it's very hard to actually break away once you make that pass. And I know firsthand when I was driving an AOSC, it is very, very easy to try and make a pass and actually successfully make a pass happen. But because of that, it's so easy just to get repassed down the next straight as well. So that's something all these drivers are having to focus on. But we said a breakaway might be able to happen, or it might not be able to happen for some of your leaders. But at the moment, your top 3 are slowly chipping away. 1.2 seconds is the gap from Brady Myers to James Mackay, as we see battling there between that was Sam Sutton and James Scott, who is having a good result at the moment in the top 6 for him. And he's looking to move his way forward. Of course, he's qualified 6th. Needs to make his way forward on that as well if he wants any chance of some good points here today, which he will be able to do because it is quite a nice strength of field. So lots of points are on offer here tonight. So if anyone is looking to make a championship charge late in this championship, this is the time to do it. But James Scott almost underneath the yellow line, almost making contact with Sam Sutton, and these two are getting very feisty as Scott thinks about the outside, can't quite do anything with it though. But that just proves that no matter how aggressive you can be through the corners, overtaking on the oval is always the easiest place to do it. Yeah, James Scott getting a bit of bump from Job Stewart through turn number 1 or through turn number 2 as well, and that's Craig Jones and Blake Purdy to tuck up. So looks like there is a little bit of a break at the front of the field, and if Brady Myers isn't going to be attacking Jake Burton here, they may just continue to pull away. Once you get out of the draft here at Daytona, it is so difficult to get it back, but actually James Mackey's doing a very good job at the moment. He looks like he might have actually worked himself back in to that draft range. He's actually closed back in about 9/10 of a second up onto Brady Myers. So that train is starting to fade a little bit, but he's starting to bring it back in. And once James is back into that position, that's going to really allow the guys like Sam, James, and Job behind him to really try and catch up. Just behind Job, actually, Blake Purdy going past on Craig Jones just as they come into the braking zone at the bus stop. And Blake is going to get that move done. So nice job from him
And up at the front, still all good. But Damian Johnston now going to go round the outside of Craig Jones. Got a nice little battle up inside the just inside the top 10 here.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a very nice move there by Damian Johnston. Just took advantage of where Craig Jones just got a little bit sideways, and look at the defense by Craig Jones towards turn number 1. Has to defend from Thomas Hinz behind, but they're still going to fight their way as a brilliant move around the outside by Craig Jones. That's amazing if we can pull it off, but the answer is just about going to be neck and neck, actually. A great effort by Craig Jones. I did not think he was going to be able to pull that car up, but he managed, and can he pull it up into this next hairpin? Just about kind of misses. The apex Wanakit kind of diamonded the corner off, but nonetheless gets the position back. So a great battle between these two here at the moment. So this is a battle for 9th and 10th place, and it's well and truly playing for keeps at the moment for these few drivers, as Thomas Hinz almost makes a bit of a mistake there as well, and actually contact between them all as well, and Hinz almost out of shape and almost turning the driver of Damian Johnston as it's getting very feisty. A very aggressive move by Damian Johnston, trying to find a way past Craig Jones, but he can't quite do it. And just quickly, whilst we watch this brilliant battle, worth noting, James Mackay has caught up to your top 3, so he is beginning to apply the pressure to Brady Myers. You can see on screen there, just closing and closing as Craig Jones and Damian Johnston continue to fight. Thomas Hinz goes around the outside in the draft, and we could almost go 3 wide into the bus stop, which I do not recommend. And nonetheless, Damian Johnston tries to bail out there and will concede the position to Thomas Hinz. So lots of chopping and changing in this mid-pack, which is great to see. But for Damian Johnston, here at a 0, goes from 9th to 11th in a single lap. And Hinzy might be about to go from 11th to 9th.
Yeah, it looks like Hinzy's got a very nice run here on Craig. He's pulling to the outside initially, but I dare say he'll cut back in and maybe go just down below the line. Craig's going to cut him off there, though, so he's going to have to go the long way round. And with the amount of speed that Commodore's got in it, he might be able to outbrake him in the braking zone here, go round the outside. It's going to make him work for it, though, Craig. And Thomas is not quite going to be able to have it there, being a little bit cautious. Following that outside line, Craig cuts back across the track through turn number 2 and down into the International Horseshoe now. And Thomas Hinz goes for the classic over-under. Tries to get the power down nice and straight, but Craig's just there, cutting back and not quite running it out to the circuit. Nice job there. And Damian Johnston's just watching this battle going, guys, can we give it up? Because that little train up ahead of them is now starting to pull away, and this will start affecting them quite poorly in the long run.
Well, you mentioned it earlier in the race, Zach, that if James Mackay manages to catch the back of Brady Myers, he'll bring the whole train. And indeed it has. Sam Sutton, James Scott, Joe Stewart, and Blake Purdy all say hello and are in with a shot of your race lead at the moment. A brilliant pack of cars. The top 8 at the moment separated by 3.5 seconds. And with the draft effect, it's only going to get closer and closer. So we have a fight on our hands. Of course, think back to last season, 3 wide. Across the start-finish line, 13 thousandths of a second separated your top 3. We've currently got 8 cars within 3.5 seconds. It could be an incredible finish if we can keep it up as Thomas Hinz continues his battle. And they're fighting very hard at the moment. Ooh, that was a little bit too close for comfort. Craig Jones has to be very careful not to get himself fired into a wall if he's going to make moves like that. And plenty of action going on at the front, including Jake Burton just backing out a little bit for a pass on Jackson Susan Harlow, and this could be a good strategy by Jake Burton at the moment. You can see Sam Sutton there going for a really long move around the outside, and it can be done. We saw it happen in your mid-pack just a few moments ago. What can Sam Sutton do? He's got the overlap on Pursuit Sim Racing's James Mackay, who has been on a brilliant run of form of late, so he's really making some good performances count at the moment. But can his defense match with anything else? It's very, very close, and I'm seeing Craig Jones falling down the order.
Oh, yeah, boy. It's Michael Taliance, which came together with, I think it was Craig Jones at one, and now they're getting checked up again, and that was just a bit awkward there. I'm not able to quite see the replay, but Taliancic and Jones going side by side through 2 and 3 there, and just got a little bit too close for comfort, and that has put a sour spin on Michael's night. He was starting to come back up through the field after a relatively poor qualifying performance from him. Unfortunate to see. But yeah, this battle up at the front's really starting to spice up now. James Mackey's brought that train up, and that battling that was going on between Burton and Suzel Harlow really checked up this top 5 here, and now it's really game on for the lead.
Yeah, it certainly is, and for Jake Burton at the moment, he's in a pretty good spot, and I say that because at the moment, Jackson Susan Harlow leading this pack is just burning his tyres up a little bit and is having to work a little bit harder than the others behind, and at the moment you can see he's actually really leaving a gap open on the inside, saying, hey Jake, if you want to go through, be my guest, but Jake is more than content just to sit behind and let Jackson Susan Harlow do all the work.
And Sam Sutton around the outside, he's going to go past Mackey. He's going to try and go past Brady Myers as well, but it's actually going to come unstuck for him as he has to tuck back in behind Mackey, not quite able to have enough room for himself on the outside of the circuit there, but he's really trying. As you were just saying that, bro, I mean, he really looks like he's trying to back the pack up a little bit here, Suzel Harlow. I think he's trying to fuel save. And as you said, maybe coax Jake Burton into going through here so that he doesn't ruin the second stint of this race, because we have known that in these first stints, the guys do tend to keep it a little bit quiet till they've come in, had their pit stop, and Blake Purdy has gone around. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll just see if we can figure out what happened there. And he had a little bit of a spin coming out of the horseshoe, I believe, or into the horseshoe, actually. Got the... Oh, yeah, he got on the grass on the outside there and just was not able to hold that one together. That was just coming down into the second horseshoe. And unfortunate for Blake Purdy. But yeah, really interesting, this battle that's going up the front, Bo.
Yeah, it certainly is, and at the moment it's only going to get bigger and bigger with the entire pack coming along for the ride, which is great to see. Job Stewart at the moment running in 7th spot is just about onto this pack as well. So we'll see what he can do if he can make his way to the front. But now Brady Myers beginning to get a little bit racy behind Jake Burton as they go through the trioval. Once again, JSH just leaving a gap for Jake Burton to go through. But Jake, ever the gentleman, just saying, no, please, you go first. But Brady Myers, not so gentleman-like, gives a bump to the back of the virtual racing school car there. And all of a sudden, it's checked up a massive gaggle of cars. See, James Mackay goes for the advantage, gets a wiggle into the international horseshoe as Brady Myers so late on the brakes and almost locks up into the side of the number 9 car, comes across, almost contact on the exit, door banging their way down the straight. No room given by Brady Myers, who was having a great run of results lately, but the run of results ends in the grass. A couple of caution cone fatalities later, and he is dumped down a few spots. So at the moment, Brady Myers, it has not been his lucky lap at the moment, and James Scott could have had the advantage to go past as well, but decided to just stay behind Brady, because we know Brady's got pace. We know he can make those spots up again, but has that knocked his confidence ever so slightly?
Yeah, well, they don't want to fall off this leading train here and not be in for a shot at the win, but yeah, he got a bit unlucky there. I mean, probably could have just conceded the position and moved on and taken it back the next time by, but Sam Sutton especially is really pushing. You know, he was sitting at the back of this train. He's actually the one pushing this train forward. I feel he doesn't really want to give up into the braking zones when he has that draft, and now we'll have to rely on the pace of Mackey to be able to catch up back up to Burton here, because Burton's got a bit of a run on Suzel Harlow, and Mackey's a little bit further back, and those guys up front are very quick. So now's the time to shine for James Mackey, and if he really wanted that position, he's got to start working for it now.
Yeah, he certainly does, and Brady Myers is trying to work for some positions to be gained once again, and Sam Sutton might be about to make it very easy, because that's very wide at turn number 1. They could give the advantage to Brady, but he just lights the rear tyres up, and doesn't quite work out for him. So Brady having to try and make something happen at the moment, but there is a pit stop in this race, which could mean that there's an opportunity there for Brady Myers to make some spots, but at the moment, he does have to be careful, because JSH, Jake Burton, and James Mackay are slowly skipping away and almost creating a bit of a breakaway. So it is going to be all up to Sam Sutton as to whether it can hook onto the back of the Pursuit Sim Racing car. And that's going to be very, very vital to see what Sam Sutton can do and if he can keep himself in the game here, as we're actually just getting a bit of information from our director of some of the top speeds in towards turn number 1, and James Scott has the car absolutely trimmed out with some brilliant gear ratios, 6 kilometers an hour quicker into turn 1 than anyone else, Zach.
Yeah, it can make a big difference, but it might also hurt him a little bit in, in actually getting the power out of the corner to try and actually get the move done. So he'll be able to get close enough for sure, but will he be able to make the move stick with gear ratios like that? It's always a bit difficult. And Sam Sutton's just run very wide coming out of the bus stop there. He's really pushing, and it's interesting to see up at the front now as well. Jake Burton and Jackson Suslan-Harlow playing funny games with each other in the way the draft is working. And have a look at this. This is very interesting up at the front here. James Mackey's going to have the speed to maybe go round, but he's going to check himself up. So these guys up at the front are playing some very interesting games right now. Jackson Suslan-Harlow backed right out of it. Might have even dabbed on the brakes a little bit, and Burton definitely got off the gas to in retaliation to that. So no one wants to lead this race at the moment. Very interesting tactic to see, and one you don't often hear about, but Jackson Suslan-Harlow not happy leading this race, and neither is Jake Burton.
Yeah, at the moment, no one really wants to lead the race, do they? And it's a bit of an odd tactic, like you suggested, that in order to win the race, you have to not be winning the race. At the moment, it seems to be the way, as Jake Burton gets a little bit out of shape there. But the top 3 doing very nicely at the moment, and Sam Sutton just ever so slightly in draft range. He's close, but he is just struggling with exits quite a lot. I'm noticing a lot of oversteer on power for Sam Sutton at the moment. He can go very aggressive under brakes. That's a real strength of that car of his, but just getting the car out of the corners isn't happening, and that's where he's losing a lot of his game. And he is just about out of draft. I'm looking at the straight line speeds, and he is just about gaining on the cars in front, but it's so minimal at the moment. And if he just makes another mistake, it could really hurt him. He does get a very nice run through the bus stop, which is just about keeping him in draft, but it's only just, Zach. So for Sam Sutton, he's really got to maximize this next lap, or it could be down to a 3-horse race.
Yeah, well, it depends if these guys up the front are still playing games with each other, because that will allow those 2 guys behind them, and they are a little bit, they're very much getting off the throttle a couple of 100 meters before the corner there at turn number 1, and you can see now Sutton has closed in massively. He's made a few mistakes into turn 1 the last few times by, but that effort is looking a little bit more solid, and he is just still within the range there, but these guys up the front playing games with each other is not going to help them.
Absolutely fantastic battle at the moment. Jamie Stover, Brian Borg, a brilliant battle towards turn number 1. There were almost 3 wide at one point. It was all going on. They were all out breaking themselves. They're all making moves on one another. Blake Purdy currently leads this, but into towards turn number 1, that was fantastic. So many cars into one tight little space, and they all pulled it up and came out nice and clean, which is fantastic to see. But this is a brilliant fight going on, and proving that the draft is very effective around this circuit, as all goes a little bit wrong for Brian Bork, but such is the length of his battle pack at the moment that he's still relatively in draft range of the car in front of Robert Hooper as well. So there is so much going on in this mid-pack. It's not just the guys up front who get to have fun. The entire field is just having a great ding-dong battle.
Yeah, and just up ahead of them, they've got, you've got that battle that's being led by, well, I mean, that's the leading pack up ahead of these guys, but there are other packs a little bit further back as well. Corey Preston's still making his way up through the field. He's just ahead of Michael Taliancic, who's had a little bit of trouble in this race as well. And they're starting to close up on these guys. Steve Jansen and Brian Borg, as we saw, just making a mistake before. Now just trailing this group, and I think Brian might have to come into the pits. He's absolutely killed the tires on his Premier Esports racing machine, and I suspect that he'll be wanting to head down onto pit line sometime soon. We're 12 laps now into our 29-lap race this evening, so we can expect a couple of pit stops to open up. And just as I say that, one car has headed down onto pit road. It's Damien Johnston for Gone Rogue Motorsport, as Steve Jansen is now looking to the outside of Brian Borg, who has decided not to pit that time by. And just up ahead of him, Robert Hooper. Big lockup and a bit of a mistake into turn number 1 as well. And just up at the front of the field as well, Brady Myers has made his way. And Sutton just onto the grass, and he's going to lock it up into turn 1. Bit more contact, but pushes his way through. And now just watch out behind James Scott, also almost coming to grief there with Sam Sutton as he was getting past through the second horseshoe there, and Brady Myers forcing his way into position number 4.
Yeah, they've just absolutely ruined any chance they had of being in the draft, and that just allowed our top 3 drivers to really skip away. The gap is 2.3 seconds between James Mackay and Brady Myers now, so that's a huge margin, and it's getting very close between James Scott and Sam Sutton, almost contacts, and I thought for a second Sam Sutton was going to go for a wild ride into the inside wall here at Daytona International Speedway. And that would have been a very big hit indeed, but James Scott got off the throttle, and that allowed the 2 guys to be able to continue on racing. So that's good spatial awareness there by James Scott, probably saving Sam Sutton a little bit, who I think was having the effect of the blind spot, not being able to see where James Scott was positioned, but he can't see where Brady Myers is either. He's now behind as well, so Sam Sutton fires the move back, but they are well and truly out of hope over that draft at the moment. So for these guys, it is purely a scrap for 4th now, because James Mackay, Jake Burton, and Jackson Susan Harlow, the 3 J's, are now the top 3.
Well, if these guys pit now and don't battle, cough, cough, Brady Myers, cough, cough, as he fires it down the inside of turn number 3 into the International Horseshoe. Good traction this time. Can he make it round the outside? Sutton's going to make it hard for him again. Dabber brakes, keeping it just on the track, and fires it down. Very straight braking zone there, nice and tight on the apex, and able to get that car straightened up nicely as Brady Myers. Good passing maneuver there, but it has really hurt these guys. So now I would expect one of these guys to be pitting around now, just to try and get back some of that time delta that they've lost from battling on some fresh tires. Lap times are significantly off the fastest laps of the race so far, but as we know, these guys are doing a little bit of fuel saving just to help with the strategy. So James Scott now going down the inside of Sam Sutton into the bus stop, and that's a nice clean pass for the Evolution Racing team driver, as Sam struggling a bit now in the final little stage of this first stint for these guys before they come into the pits. And we will see if anyone comes down onto pit road this time by, but and it is in fact the car of Jackson Suslin Harlow who comes down onto pit lane first, but he's come in very hot, and he may end up now with a pit lane speeding infringement. So I think he might have just cleared it there. Yeah, it was about 10 kilometers an hour over coming in. So we'll see how this pit stop time is for the Logitech Alta C Sports driver. And he has been sitting in that lane for a very, very long time.
No penalty.
5 seconds, no penalty. So Jackson Suslin Harlow now away, and he is the effective leader of this race. So he's come out in clear air, which is sort of good, but those guys up the front are really going to have to hustle now, because Jackson Suslin Harlow has the undercut here, and if he pushes, he's going to be able to extend his lead to potentially something beyond recovery.
But one of the interesting things about such a high-speed circuit is that actually having tires that are up to pressures has less rolling resistance. The tires are actually slightly quicker in a straight line, and for Jackson Susan Harlow, he'd have a bit more rolling resistance in the tires because they're not up to pressure. So it's actually going to be a little bit slower in a straight line for him as well. So it could actually balance out quite nicely as to what is the quicker strategy. And just a bit of a lock-up there for Jackson. He keeps it on the island, which is good to see, but nonetheless, that would have lost him a little bit of time in regards to Jake Burton and James Mackay, who goes side by side across the start-finish line. And we'll see who is later on the brakes. So they're fighting it at the moment, which is not what they need to do. They need to be single file and helping each other. And that was 0.007 of a second across the start line. But flashback to last season, sorry, first and second were 2,000ths of a second, and your top three 13,000ths of a second. So this is the kind of racing you can always expect around this circuit, which is great, and that is why it is a fan favorite, and we love every time this circuit is on the calendar. But for Jake Burton and James Mackay, they might just be giving Jackson Susan Harlow a little bit of an advantage, as Corey Preston, I believe, has spun in the pit lane, and he has locked the rear brakes and just never going to slow that up, and that is a speeding penalty for sure. I'm clocking that at 126 kilometers an hour in the pit lane, and the pit speed limit is 88, so for Corey Preston, that's just a little bit over, and unfortunately, that might be his night over too.
Yeah, that's pretty spicy there for Corey Preston. Not good to see for him. But a couple more cars have been down onto the pit lane. Brady Myers and James Scott, two notable drivers who were in, and they've come out significantly behind the driver of Jackson Suslin Harlow. So they're really going to have to push. Remember, Brady was in the fight for the lead. Just a handful of laps to go, and falling behind a little bit, but that gap is pretty monumental. So cars that have decided to pit early are really going to be at the advantage here, and it was really interesting. Oh, and there's a big accident further back in the field. Who was that? That was Blake Purdy. Just got turned round into the second horseshoe, and he was being followed by Damian Johnston there, who just got a little bit too deep, and just absolutely speared off the driver of Blake Purdy. Very unfortunate. But we do have one of the leaders in the pits now. It's James Mackey, who has pulled off from Jake Burton. So Jake Burton trying to make the overcut work as he locks the brakes up into turn number 1 now. But it's really go time for Jake Burton as he struggles to put the power down. And have to see where James Mackey comes out in relation to Jackson Suslin Harlow, because that will be very interesting for our battle for the lead.
Yeah, it certainly will be, but I'm looking at the live Delta time, and it looks like JSH has made some very nice grounds throughout the outlap, which is great news for him, but the issue is that James Mackay's pit stop was almost 3 seconds faster than Jackson Susan Harlow, and you've got to put that down to the amount of leading JSH was doing earlier in the race, not in draft, and that's a monumental dive under brake. Almost got to the rear bumper of the number 9 car, but Jackson was most definitely quicker than James Mackey throughout that entire phase, when Mackey went a couple of laps longer than Jackson did. But just the difference in pit stop times is massive between the two, and that means you've got to wonder just if the Pursuit Sim Racing car is going to be a little bit fuel critical, because you know you can save a lot of fuel around Daytona, but 3 seconds in a 45-minute race is a monumental difference. But what does that mean for Jake Burton? Has he been able to save a similar amount of fuel, or has there been a really nice advantage made by James Mackey? But the issue is that he hasn't escaped Jackson Susan Harlow, and Jackson is closing and closing, as we can see Jake Burton goes into the pit lane, braking extremely early as JSH just breezes by James Mackey. Not even a contest there, but James Mackey, how is he on fuel? And he's actually fuel saving there into the bus stop chicane. So I've got to say, I think he's very fuel critical, and he knows he's gone a little bit too risky on the fuel stop, because you cannot save 3 seconds of fuel in just 16 laps. That is a big difference. But what can Jake Burton do? We're seeing pit stops in the 25-second range for most drivers. James Mackey in the 22.9-second bracket. Where does Jake Burton stack up? We should see him off the jacks any moment now. As you can see, your race leaders are coming through the tri-oval, and Jake Burton, well, he's got the much slower pit exit, so he is not even going to be in the draft at this rate. Jackson Susan Harlow could be in a very nice spot here if James Mackey doesn't have any fuel, but with Jake Burton having the freshest tires, he needs to put in the outlap and the first flying lap of his life to stay in this race.
Yeah, as you said, Bo, especially cold tires on a very cold track. Nighttime here at Daytona, remember, and as you said, the rolling resistance in those tires is going to be holding Burton back. Both of these guys up to pressure, up to speed, and they will be monumentally quick in a straight line as well compared to Jake Burton. So he's in a real stroke of bother here. And I don't know, I think James Mackey's probably the person with the best position at the moment. I know he's done a lot of, he's taken a lot less fuel during that pit stop, but he did have the draft for pretty much that entire first stint there. And if he knows that he's going to be, if he can sit behind JSH for pretty much the rest of this stint, just until, say, the final lap, then he should be okay. So it's going to be an interesting mind game between these two up the front here. They'll probably just try and keep that gap away from Burton if possible. But with the last couple of laps coming up, I'd expect this battle to really start exploding.
I was just looking at the live delta times there as these drivers make their way through the second half of the lap, and Jake Burton lost a 1/10.5 in a single straight line. And we know his car is not slow. He's got a top speed of 304 kilometers an hour, which is actually quicker than both JSH and James Mackey. So Jake Burton's actually got the quickest car in a straight line of the three, but just the rolling resistance in the tire not allowing him to do anything with it, and the gap almost extended to 3 seconds. You can see the live delta at 2.7 on screen there, but my delta is saying almost 3 seconds, and when he came out of the pits, it was 2.5, so half a second in a single lap lost by Jake Burton there. So he has a big mountain to climb, as we're seeing Brian Borg and Robert Hooper exchanging positions quite nicely at the moment towards turn number 1. And well, I don't know where Brian Borg's going, but I can tell you right now, it's not to the scene of the apex, because Robert Hooper made that one look easy on the cutback.
Yeah, nice job there from Robert Hooper and Brian Borg, having a little bit of a look around the outside now, actually. And that's Brad Newman on the inside there of Brian, trying to make something work as well, but neither of them have been able to capitalize on that, and they're just going to trip over a little bit each other as they come through turn number 4 and into the very difficult braking zone at 5. And Brian Borg is almost going to go into the back of Robert Hooper there on the apex. Just manages to gather it all up, luckily for both of those guys. But Brian Borg, he's had a bit of a frustrating race, and now starting to make his way back through the field. Started at 10th position, down in 13th, but he's got some good pace in that car. And considering what he's been through so far, it's not got a whole lot of damage on it. So still a bit of speed in his Premier Esports machine, but just up ahead of these guys, Jamie Stovald's having a big look at Michael Taliancic there in his Team Hyperdrive machine, and Michael Taliancic also having a bit of a look at Damian Johnston, but running a bit wide out through the bus stop there and up towards the front of the field now. And James Scott in the number 7 car has made his way through on Brady Myers, who was looking very strong in the early stages of this race, but now just struggling a little bit for pace as the Evolution Racing Team car moves itself into 4th position. And Sam Sutton also looking pretty confident at the moment as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. Sam Sutton is looking a lot more comfortable in this second phase of the race than he was in the first. Of course, we think back to him sliding around as we get a Motum simulation replay, and I'm not sure of what this is, but we'll see what's going on here as Robert Hooper is involved in a battle here, and you can see just breezing past at the moment and the high speed. In fact, Robert just pulls out a little bit there, but just did not have the speed to make his way through it all. So just lacking a little bit of straight line speed there as they all funnel their way towards turn number 1, and Nani Dorifto in towards turn number 1. A brilliant save there by Robert Hooper, but unfortunately not the quickest way through turn number 1, but nonetheless a very nice amount of star points on our Modem Simulation replay as Michael Taliancic completely misses the apex as he was fighting the driver of Damian Johnston there, and unfortunately loses another 2 spots. So from Michael Taliancic, who we usually see being one of the last cars to pit, was the first to pit, and it just hasn't paid off for him so far.
Yeah, I know. He'll probably be ruining the fact that he's made that decision, and I'm sure that's what he'll be defining as the wrong turning point of this race. But it's been pretty unfortunate. He got spun around earlier in this race as it's on for the lead. James Mackey round the outside in the Pursuit Sim Racing machine. Ooh. On Jackson Suslan-Harlow, just pinches the inside front tire there, and Mackey not quite able to get it done. Jackson Suslan-Harlow in that Astro Gaming Altus Esports machine there. Very, very difficult to get past at the moment. Brady Myers is having a bit of a look around the outside as well on James Scott. And Sam Sutton's going to cut back in underwards. Very nice move there.
Absolutely.
And where's that?
huge crash on the front straight. I just caught a glimpse of it there, and one of the Pursuit Sim the Gone Rogue Motorsport car got turned violently into the outside wall. I didn't quite catch it on my camera angle, but you'll see right here, just a very large hit for one of the drivers in towards turn number 1, and there you go, just bang into the wall goes Christian Smart, turn number 1, and that is disaster for him. So a very odd incident there, just involved with the 22 car. And from my camera angle, it looks a lot worse than that, but nonetheless, Christian Smart, not what he would have liked to have had happened. And Jake Burton at the moment really on a charge. Last lap around 0.8 of a second quicker than Jackson Susan Harlow. And Zach, I'll need you to take over because I've just bit my tongue.
Very nice. And it looks like Sam Sutton is going to go down the inside there of James Scott. So making that one work. And Brady Myers lurking in the back as well. James is going to have to make sure that he got some nice speed out of the final corner there. Not looking too bad as they head down towards the start-finish line. But Jake Burton, as Bo was just saying, he's really been working that gap back up to the front, but they're not making it easy for themselves. They're behaving themselves into turn 1 this time by, but James Scott and Sam Sutton once again into turn number 1. And Sutton has the inside line. Brady Myers having a little bit of a look as well. Almost getting a bit of overlap there on the back of James Scott. And Sam Sutton has moved himself back up into position number 4. And now Brady Myers dives down into the international horseshoe there. And James Scott has had to relinquish 2 positions in 2 corners. And Jake Burton is now back into the leading battle. So very nicely done from him. And there's Jamie Stovall there for Team Hyperdrive. Now, he was just involved in the incident before with Christian Smart. And I wonder if that's a Gone Rogue Motorsports car just serving up a little cold dish of revenge there. And unfortunately, that may have gotten Brian Borg involved as well. We'll go on board with Damien Johnston and his Gone Rogue Motorsports machine. And, I mean, he still looks like he still had room to pull it up in time for the corner. So, hard to say either way there. But either way, Jamie Stovall around and being set further back in his race. Back up to the front, though. Jake Burton now pursuing the leading duo of James Mackey. And in the lead, Jackson Suslin Harlow. But Jake Burton now is looking to get a move done already. And JSH going to go down the inside. We're going to go 3 wide down into the oval here across the start-finish line. And that is pretty much a photo finish of the race from last season, albeit with a couple of different competitors, but they're trying to sort themselves out into turn number 1. Mackey's going to be the big loser, maybe, unless he can get a nice straight run through here. Jake Burton using every little bit of road available to him to try and get past into position number 1 now, but he's left the door open for Mackey, and he's tried to squeeze down there on Mackey in the mid-corner, and it's worked a treat. Mackey having to back out of that, and position number 2 goes to Jake Burton for the time being. And now Jackson Suslin Hull is going to have to be on the defensive big time here. Now, Sam Sutton, Brady Myers, and James Scott just behind. I mean, they're not just behind. They're about 6 odd seconds behind this group of cars here. But if they can continue plugging away and not getting too involved with each other, and these guys up at the front continue battling, we may just see a 6-car battle for the lead. But time will have to see on that one. There's only 6 laps left of this race, if you can imagine. We've already been racing for 23 laps this evening, and now Jake Burton giving a little bit of a push to the Alta C Sports machine of Jackson Suslin Harlow as they come down into the bus stop for the 23rd time, and a nice clean run from all 3 drivers as they come back down through what is turn 3 and 4 here at Daytona. And to see if we've got a spare commentator on the sideline. You got your back, Bo?
I'm indeed back. I was actually just looking at the clock. That was 4 minutes of talking, Zach. That was quite impressive. But nonetheless, what is impressive is the speed of Jake Burton at the moment, bum drafting the driver of Jackson Susan Harlow in towards turn number 1. So Jake Burton probably one of the better spots of this top 3 at the moment, because of course he does have the newest tires, and that is a big advantage when it comes to the heavy traction zones and braking zones here at Daytona International Speedway. But at the moment, it is Jackson, Susan, Harley leading the battle of the Jays. Jackson, Jake, and James all fighting their way through. 29 laps is the target distance for this race. Currently working lap number 24. So how is it going to pan out at the end of lap 29? But at the moment, it's all just trying to size each other up. Where are their cars strong? Where is their car weak? And how brave are they willing to be? Of course, we saw 3 wide. Absolutely brilliant across the start-finish line. And we'll see if that can happen at the end of lap 29. And I think there is every chance of that, as I'm just seeing Brian Borg falling down the timing screens. And he's actually done that. Oh, he's actually just blown up. Unfortunately, his car has said enough is enough. And he has had to pull off in a cloud of smoke, gearbox oil, and a little bit of a bill as well for him to pay towards the team. As Jake Burton just looking left and right. And actually, I had to have another look at this just quickly. Jake Burton was weaving very viciously down the straight, and I thought for a second he might have got into the wall, but he didn't avoid the wall in a straight line, which is good news for Jake Burton. Of course, being a virtual racing school coach, it's probably not something you'd want to teach your clients, but nonetheless, maybe he can give Jackson, Susan, Harlow a lesson as we head to just 5 laps to go here at the banking of Daytona International Speedway. Does Jake try anything on this lap? The overspeed is absolutely brilliant, and he's got to give it straight to the back bumper of Jackson, Susan, Harlow, and he has to be careful. It can be pretty easy to upset the rear of the car if you do give it a big enough hit. You can see there a lot more speed for JSH in towards turn number 1 than he was used to, and he just goes a bit wide there, Zach.
Yeah, it was a little too much for our camera to handle as well, the amount of speed that he was carrying into there. But yeah, it's this battle at the lead. I think it's going to be a battle of patience, and those 3 young men with you know, quite a bit of experience under their belt are going to have to wait patiently for the victory of this race. And Jake Burton is showing quite a lot of patience at the moment, I feel. He could probably be attacking for the lead a lot harder at the moment, but I think all 3 of these guys know one thing, and that's that it only matters on the last trip around the circuit. And Jake Burton right now is really trying to set himself up for that final lap. He's trying to suss out how fast his car is, how much of a run he's going to need, where he wants to be in the final, probably the final run into the bus stop is really the most critical part of this little plan for him. And it seems like he's actually just dropped off quite a bit there, trying to just get that. I don't know if he's trying to save fuel or he's gone for a pretty mega run there. So he's could just possibly be practicing and rehearsing this final lap dash. You can see how much he's starting to close in and how much he actually pulled away from James Mackey there, and possibly rolling out of the throttle now as well, all 3 of these guys, and just trying to play a bit of a game. You can see the overspeed, and Jake probably could have gone for a bit more of a run there, but again, just playing the patience game and waiting for the last lap of this race potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is going to be an interesting thing. How can they strategize to set that final lap up? Where can they make the moves, and where can their opponents potentially make a move back as well? I'm seeing that the draft is just so powerful at the moment on the oval. So I've gone to take a look at the wind speed, and 21 kilometers an hour is exactly why we're seeing some brilliant slipstreaming at the moment. Very high wind speeds here blowing to the east. And as soon as I mentioned the wind speeds, they've now rapidly dropped down to 18 kilometers an hour, now 17. So I've just commentated cursed the winds, and that is a first for me, Zach. I've never commentated cursed the winds. That is quite impressive. But so is Jake Burton. He's managed to close that gap up that he did lose a little bit over the second phase of that lap. So for Jake, he's now closed it up. So he knows he's very strong through the infield compared to Jackson, Susan, Harlow. That's vital information. Now, if this was the last lap, can Burton go to the outside? The answer looks like no. He's just not able to get the extra speed. Of course, if you go to the outside, you're obviously going to be using a lot more track, a longer distance of the corner as well. So you have to cover more ground, and that's where the difficulty is. Jackson, Susan, Harlow getting a bit sideways there out of the exit of the corner as well. So that's vital information. RJSH's tires beginning to drop off, and while Jake Burton continues to size up the Logic G Altus Esports car, James Mackay just lurking in the background, thinking where can he make a move. And I can tell you right now, I am on board with James Mackay. He is not even close to full throttle. He is lifting off like you would not believe behind Jake Burton. If you think James Mackay is just settling for third, you could not be more wrong.
No, he's playing the exact same game that Jake's playing, and Jackson's, I mean, he's got the shortest straw at the moment, but he's still trying to play some games as well. And you definitely can't count him out, given that he is currently in the lead of the race. And I mean, Jake and James could just completely trip over themselves down the back straight on the final lap. You never know what might happen. And you know, even one of the guys from this pack here, Sam Sutton, Brady Myers, James Scott, maybe one of these guys could come away with the victory. There's a big entanglement up at the front, but one thing I can pretty much be quite sure of, unless something a bit untoward happens these last 2 laps, I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing it, if not 3 wide, then extremely close to 3 wide as we come across the line here, because both James Mackey and Jake Burton are trying to set this up, and they're just playing with what they've got, because you don't want to be too close here, because if you get the draft too early, you'll run out of the speed towards the end, or towards where the start finish line is, and you just won't have the juice to get past if you have to check up or do anything like that. So both of these guys now just trying to find the perfect gap. James probably needs to be a little bit closer to Jake, and Jake could probably handle being a little bit further back. They're going side by side now, and this is the practice run. Or is this where Jake decides to take the lead of the race? He's going to go on the brakes early, and Jackson Suslan-Harlow is going to tug it in. Big lockup on the left-hand front for both guys, running it deep now, and they're going to actually start racing now. And Jake Burton has come back and taken the lead of this race. And now he's going to have to defend around the outside as Jackson Suslan-Harlow tries to take that position back on the inside, but Jake Burton's got great exit speed there and goes round the outside of the Altus Esports driver. So this is interesting. Not playing the way we thought out, Bo.
No, not at all. And look at the move there by Jackson Suslan-Harlow. But what I do find interesting is I'm not getting too excited about this, because Jake Burton was not fighting the defense there. He was like, oh no, I'm going to lose the lead again to Jackson Suslan-Harlow. He didn't mind losing that race lead just then. He is quite happy to start the final lap of the race in second place, which is very interesting, because we know that, you know, what he did just then was enough. Did he lead in towards turn number 1? No, he didn't. Jackson led, but Jake led across the start-finish line. Now, what can Jake do going into the bus stop? It's just all about practicing and rehearsing at the moment for these drivers, and you can see it's just getting very interesting for Jake Burton. He's thinking about where can he make moves, where can he potentially get past the Logitech G Altus Esports car, and he's just thinking where on earth can he make it happen. James Mackay isn't really making any desperate lunges or practice runs at the moment. He's just sitting there in third place, but actually now as I say that, we go side by side to the start finish line towards the tri-oval. It is a 29 lap race, and lap 29 commences now. It's going to be late on the brakes for Jackson Suslan-Harlow in towards turn number 1. Almost contact! There is contact! Jake Burton goes sideways in towards turn number 1. And could that be the end of his chance at a race win here in round number 9 of the iRacing official series for V8 Supercars? James Mackey is currently in third place behind a locking up Jake Burton into the International Horseshoe complex of corners. And this is where James Mackey, if he has anything to throw at Jake Burton, has to make it happen. And if Jake Burton has anything to throw at Jackson Suslan-Harlow, well, he's got ground to make up before he can even think about it, because Jackson Suslan-Harlow has had a perfect start to the race so far, but he is lighting up the rear tires. He's getting a bit oversteery, as is Jake Burton, as they now make their way into where the race was potentially decided last season. We saw Jordan Ross miss the apex, and that set up a brilliant run to the line for Wayne Burke. Can Jake Burton summon anything from that performance last season by Wayne Burke into his result? He's in the draft, he is closing, it's half a second is the margin, it's live on your screen down the bottom there. Wind speed picking up, that helps the draft as well, as Jake Burton continues to close, a gap down to 0.4 of a second. So late on the brakes is Jake Burton, but is that too late? He might have just compromised his exit there. Traffic as well, and Jackson Susan Harlow got oversteer as well. This is coming down to the final meters of Daytona as it did last season. Jake Burton is closing, but this lapped car could almost help Jackson Susan Harlow. He's got the draft himself, and Jake Burton in the mirrors of Jackson Susan Harlow gets closer and closer, but Jake Burton is going to run out of meters, and Jackson Susan Harlow wins another classic at Daytona International Speedway. Jake Burton gave it everything he got, but turn number 1 was the catalyst for what would be a second place. He extends his championship lead, but the fireworks go off here in Florida, and it's in the name of JSH taking a victory at Daytona International Speedway and redemption for AOSC. He felt he could have had a strong result there, and it wasn't to be. Redemption on the Monday.
Yeah, excellent result for Jackson Susan Harlow there, and Jake Burton so close to victory. But I think the really defining factor in that is we just get a great replay of the end of the race for James Scott and Brady Myers there, and Brady not winning out in that battle, but it was that traffic that really won it there for Jackson Susan Harlow. Just that little bit of draft that he had was just enough to hold off that big charge from Jake Burton, who I think otherwise would have been able to storm around the outside there, and some big donuts there for Jackson Susan Harlow. That's a well-deserved win for him, and what a fantastic night's racing from everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great classic, and if you didn't get the cans out for that race, an absolutely brilliant race there. And it was won by Jackson Susan Harlow in the end. A great result ahead of Jake Burton and James Mackey. He kind of fell off a little bit in that final lap, which is a shame to see. But nonetheless, a podium is a great result considering that he is actually driving one-handed after an injury back in karting. Sam Sutton and James Scott would be your top 5. A great result for those two who continue to fight it out all race long. And Brady Myers, well, he started 3rd, but he doubled that position to 6th, unfortunately. Just was not his night. Well, in a race where he could have closed in on the championship towards Jake Burton, well, that gap just gets extended once again. Job Stewart comes home in 7th ahead of Thomas Hill, Michael Taliancic, and Steve Jansen.
Yeah, Damian Johnston coming home in 11th position ahead of Robert Hooper for Zero Esports. Brad Newman in the one performance racing car was the one performance racing car we saw on the grid this evening. In 13th, Harley Haber worked his way back up to 14th after stopping on lap number 1 in his Mach 1 Esports machine. Blake Purdy in his Pursuit Sim racing car came home in 15th ahead of Brenton O'Brien, big team boss down at Evolution Racing Team, who came home there in position number 16. Jamie Stovold in 17th ahead of Ben Christensen in 18th. Liam Wilde in 19th there, and Greg Sharp coming home in 20th. And then the rest of our field, Sean Thompson, the last car on the lead lap. And then we have Rob Harris, Christian Smart, Brian Borg, Corey Preston, Craig Jones, and Christian Ortega, who were early retirements in tonight's proceeding.
Well, there we go. Another classic at Daytona, and what a brilliant finish once again. I mean, this season, well, this track really needs to be on every single calendar. Every time it produces fantastic racing. And it wasn't quite the spectacle it was last season, but your top 2 still separated by less than 1/10 of a second. But as you touched on, Zach, absolutely, the lap traffic there really helped Jackson Susan Harlow out. And if it wasn't for that, it just could have been Jake Burton's race. But Jake Burton will have a chance at redemption, because this Wednesday we have the Sprint Series Australasia, and that is going to be at Road Atlanta for the Enduro round, 90 minutes around that track, which I'm sure you're pretty darn excited about, Zach.
Yeah, well, Road Atlanta is just one of the best tracks in the world, and who wouldn't want to drive a medium downforce GT car through the beautiful hills? And we've also already seen some fantastic racing in that series, and should be a good night's worth of racing. And we're also going to be going to Road Atlanta for the Monday night series as well here on the iRacing Esports Network for the iRacing V8 Supercars official series. Round number 10 will be from Road Atlanta as well. So it's going to be 2 good races in the hills of Road Atlanta.
Yeah, well, if you really like Road Atlanta, you can even do the V8 Supercars race as well on the weekend, the first of the endurance races for V8 Scop. So that's going to be another one as well. So really, we may as well just rename this to Road Atlanta Week. That's basically how it's turning out.
I'm all for that.
I know you would be. You absolutely love it. And that is very fair and well, because it is a great circuit. So you should definitely tune into all the social media and our broadcast as well, because it always puts on a great show, just like we had tonight for round number 9 of the iRacing official V8 Supercars Championship. I'm Bo Albert. Alongside me was Zach Hanlon, who was a great call tonight. And of course, Jay Kennedy, who was utterly useless as always. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next week. This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going with the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?